You might remember that just before the 2012 presidential election, there was all sorts of right-wing rape-related nonsense that we were hearing from candidates and Republican voters alike. Today, we are going to go back to a great classic interview that I did just a few months before the 2012 election with Nancy Cohen, who's a historian and also author about a book about the politics of sex. It doesn't need much more of an introduction. It was a fascinating, fascinating interview, and much of what the examples have changed, but the underlying principles of what led so many Republicans to make absolutely cuckoo comments about rape and the politics of sex 4 years ago still holds through today. Let's check out this interview. Nancy L. Cohen is joining us. She's an historian, also author of Delirium, The Politics of Sex in America. Nancy, for the last week or two, we've been talking about Todd Akin's comment about legitimate rape and, of course, the body shutting the whole thing down and all sorts of other incredible things that the body's able to do. We also talked about Paul Ryan's comment about rape for him is one of many forms of conception. Now, as shocking as these comments have been, you have made the point, which is a very good point, which is that this rape talk is not really new in the Republican Party. It certainly is not something that came up only in the last 2 weeks. Tell us about it.
Exactly, exactly. Well, it's surprising to hear national candidates, a vice president for a major political party talking like this, but really no one should be surprised. The Republican Party has been taken over by extremists. We know that. But this anti-sex, anti-women, anti-gay extremism is the main mission of the Republican Party. And it's the result of 40 years of grassroots organizing by people I call sexual fundamentalists, whose goal is to take us back to a time when birth control was illegal. It was illegal in every state to be gay, and, women weren't equal.
So I want to push back a little bit on the idea that it is really the main goal of the party, because I've kind of identified, some people think it's more than three, but I've kind of identified three wings of the Republican Party, so to speak. You've got the Mitt Romney pro-business, I want low taxes type, and then you've got the religious social conservatives, and then you've got the kind of Tea Party, pseudo-anarchist, we just really care about freedom wing. I think what you're saying is very accurate, but I don't know that I would apply it to the Republican Party as a whole, but really specifically to that second group, the religious social conservative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say I agree with you and I disagree with you. One, I would say that, yes, the money powers, the 1%, have very specific goals that they want to get out of Mitt Romney. He's a perfect candidate for them. But let's face it, they're 1%. Maybe a few more percent that vote with these people. So no matter what they want, they can't control a political party and they can't win a national election without aligning themselves with others. So where I slightly disagree with you, and this is the relationship between the Tea Party and the religious right, I tell the story in Delirium about how the Tea Party was little more than a rebranding of the Christian right during a very unpopular time. And so if you look at a lot of the polling on what so-called Tea Party identifiers believe, they are disproportionately against things like the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They're disproportionately against birth control and abortion. So there's a real synergy between the Tea Party types and the religious right.
No, you make a good point, actually, and really, I should know this because just last week we covered the poll where the Tea Party, only 6% of those who identify themselves as Tea Partiers think that there should be such a thing as same-sex marriage, compared to 11% of religious values Republicans, or however they described. So maybe what I described was what the Tea Party claimed to be about, but really, you're right, that this has been an incredibly useful way for right-wing social bigotry to kind of interject itself into something labeled as something about low taxes and freedom.
Right. Americans, a widely shared value on the left and the right in America is freedom. So if you want to try to weasel your way back into power in America and you're very good at political organizing and you don't care what lies you tell, then you call yourself freedom lovers. Okay, when they're talking about putting transvaginal ultrasounds in our vaginas, I don't think that's freedom loving.
Right. No, it's one of those incredible double standards where it's all about freedom, except when it comes to be freedom about anything that's not part of the Bible or otherwise part of the religious rights agenda. Then the government getting involved is not only okay, it's absolutely necessary to maintain the fabric of the country.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's go back a little bit to the rape comments, because I'm actually a little surprised. I've started to get a lot of emails from women, messages on Twitter, etc., saying, I appreciate that you've been covering the Akin comments and the Ryan comments, etc., but we really got to move on because we're getting sick of it. And I was actually surprised to hear that from a lot of self-described progressive women. What do you make of that? I'm not passing any judgment or making any analysis. I'm merely passing along to you the messages I've been getting. Are you surprised to hear that?
Well, I'm a little surprised to hear that. I guess from my perspective, I've spent the last couple years writing a book about this kind of radical, far right religious fundamentalism at a time when the press was talking mostly about freedom and taxes and deficits and stuff. And so what I realized is, and looking over the polling from the last 40 or 50 years, the social issues really are winning issues for progressives and for Democrats. Now, we've been told by conventional wisdom that these alienate mainstream Americans. That's not true. I talk about that a lot. So I got one email like this from a close friend of mine who is a progressive but doesn't spend a lot of time following politics. And she said virtually the same thing. I wish these right to lifers would just shut up. We want to get to the real issues. So I think the problem is, the dilemma is that, we want to see the middle class rebuilt. We want to see fair taxes. There's a lot of things on a progressive agenda that really do seem more important than fighting battles that should have been won a long time ago. But I guess what I would caution is that when we assume that those battles have been won, the sexual fundamentalists come back into power because they don't stop talking about this among their constituency. And it's really important that a lot of the people who weren't paying attention to politics over the summer are aware of what today's Republican Party is really about, that the extremists are running the show, and that Romney is fully on board with this really extreme agenda.
Absolutely, and we saw that incredibly, happen with contraception, and abortion never seems to go away. So if you stop talking about it in a way, you are putting yourself in a risky position because the other side can control the message. Nancy L. Cohen, author of Delirium, The Politics of Sex in America. Really great to have you on today.
So great to be here. Thanks, David.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be back with plenty more after this.